A bully pours a drink on a black girl in a crowded diner, thinking it's just another cruel joke to make his friends laugh. But what happens next will shatter his world. The video goes viral, humiliating her and destroying his reputation overnight. Then his father shows up, a man once feared across the country, the leader of the Hells Angels. And when he steps forward in front of the whole town, he says something no one expected, something that makes the bully's knees buckle. That girl? She's not just his victim, she's his family. Now the entire town is watching as one boy faces his greatest punishment, not prison, but forgiveness. His father's past, the girl's pain, and the town's prejudice are about to collide in a storm of guilt, grace, and redemption. Can a cruel mistake turn into a miracle of forgiveness? Or will the sins of the past destroy them all before grace can heal what hate began? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The humid Friday afternoon hung heavy over Main Street, where teenagers spilled out of Mel's diner like ice cream from an overfilled cone. Inside, the red vinyl booths squeaked beneath restless bodies, and the neon-trimmed jukebox hummed out the latest pop hits. Ryan Bennett slouched in a corner booth, his lanky frame taking up more space than necessary as he tried to command attention from his friends. "Man, I'm telling you," Ryan said, voice carrying above the diner's buzz. "Coach basically begged me to join the team." He took a long sip of his chocolate milkshake, watching his friends' reactions over the rim of the glass. The bell above the door chimed, and Aisha Daniels stepped in, her worn sketchbook hugged close to her chest. She moved quietly, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. Her braids were tied back neatly, and her clothes were simple but clean, jeans and a powder blue t-shirt with small paint stains near the hem. "Well, look who it is," sneered Jake, one of Ryan's friends. "The artsy-fartsy girl who thinks she's better than everyone else." "Bet she's got another masterpiece in that book of hers," Tommy added with a smirk. "Probably drawing unicorns and rainbows." Ryan felt something twist in his stomach. He knew Aisha from chemistry class. She always sat in the front row, hand raised, answers ready. She never bothered anyone, kept to herself mostly. But right now, with his friend's eyes on him, expecting something, that didn't matter. "Hey, I got something better than rainbows for her," Ryan announced, standing up with his half-full milkshake. The cold glass felt heavy in his hand as he approached Aisha, who had just settled into a booth with her sketchbook open. She looked up at him, brown eyes curious but cautious. Before she could speak, Ryan tipped the glass, and chocolate milk cascaded over her head. The thick liquid splattered across her face, soaked into her shirt, and dripped onto the pages of her sketchbook. The diner erupted in laughter. Phones appeared from pockets like magic, recording the moment. Aisha sat perfectly still, chocolate milk running down her face, her expression frozen, but her eyes alive with hurt and dignity. "Oops," Ryan said, playing to his audience. "Guess I'm just clumsy." More laughter followed, but something about it felt hollow now. Mrs. Martinez, the diner owner, rushed over with a stack of napkins. "Out!" she shouted at Ryan and his friends. "All of you out now!" Ryan swaggered out with his friends, high-fiving and laughing, but the twist in his stomach had turned into a knot. Behind him, he heard Mrs. Martinez's gentle voice asking Aisha if she was okay. By the time Ryan got home, the video was everywhere. He sprawled on his bed, scrolling through his phone, watching the likes and shares climb. But it was the comments that caught his attention. What a racist jerk. Someone needs to teach that bully a lesson. Can't believe people still act like this in 2023. His phone buzzed with messages from people he barely knew, some congratulating him, others condemning him. The knot in his stomach grew tighter. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Ryan's bedroom door flew open, revealing his father's massive frame filling the doorway. Michael Hammer. Bennett's face was dark with fury, his normally steady hands clenched into fists. "What the hell were you thinking?" Hammer's voice was low and dangerous. Ryan sat up, trying to maintain his casual attitude. "It was just a joke, Dad. Everyone thought it was funny." "A joke?" Hammer stepped into the room, and Ryan instinctively scooted back on his bed. "You humiliated that girl, made her feel small, targeted her because you could. That what I taught you? Come on, it's not that big a deal." "Not that big a deal?" Hammer grabbed Ryan's phone, holding up the screen where the video was still playing. "You're all over social media. People are calling for your head. The school's probably going to get involved. And worse than all that, you hurt someone innocent just to look big in front of your friends." Ryan rolled his eyes, but his heart was racing. "Whatever. You're making too much of this." Hammer stared at his son for a long moment, disappointment etched in every line of his weathered face. Without another word, he turned and left the room, pulling the door shut behind him. As night settled in, Ryan lay in his bed, unable to sleep. His phone kept lighting up with notifications. He couldn't stop scrolling through the comments, each one feeling like a small cut. The video had thousands of views now, and the story was spreading beyond their small town. Through his bedroom wall, he could hear his father's voice, low and serious, talking on the phone. "Yes, I understand. No, you're right. It's time I told them the truth." Ryan stared at his ceiling, the knot in his stomach now, a heavy weight. The laughter in the diner seemed far away, replaced by the image of Aisha's face, dignified even as chocolate milk dripped from her chin. For the first time since it happened, he allowed himself to feel something beyond bravado. Shame. The night grew deeper, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, Ryan kept hearing his father's words. "It's time I told them the truth," and wondering what truth could be worse than the one he'd created today. The truth about who he was, and what he was capable of doing to someone who'd never done anything to deserve it. Saturday morning arrived with a weight that pressed down on the whole town. The sun struggled through heavy clouds, casting a dim light over Main Street as people gathered outside Kelly's diner. The familiar neon "open" sign buzzed above their heads, but this wasn't going to be a normal breakfast rush. Local news vans lined the curb, their satellite dishes reaching toward the gray sky. Reporters checked their microphones and smoothed their hair, preparing for the story that had exploded overnight. Parents stood in tight clusters, their faces pinched with concern and judgment. Some held protest signs condemning bullying and racism. Inside the diner, Mrs. Martinez had pushed tables aside to create an open space. Pastor Samuel Green stood near the counter, his Bible tucked under his arm, speaking quietly with a group of church members. His presence lent gravity to the moment. This wasn't just about an apology, but about healing a wound in their community. Michael Hammer Bennett's motorcycle rumbled into the parking lot, drawing all eyes. Ryan sat behind him, clutching his father's jacket. They dismounted, and Ryan's face showed the signs of a sleepless night. Dark circles under red-rimmed eyes, and a pallor that made his freckles stand out stark against his skin. "Stand up straight," Michael muttered as they walked toward the diner. "Own your mistakes." Ryan shoved his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. "This is stupid. Why do we have to make such a big deal?" "Because what you did was wrong," Michael cut him off, his voice firm but tired. "And sometimes fixing things means facing them head on." The bell above the door chimed as they entered. The murmur of conversation died, replaced by tense silence. Camera phones rose like a forest of judgment, ready to capture whatever happened next. Pastor Green stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on Michael's shoulder. "We're just waiting for the Daniels family," he said softly. They didn't have to wait long. The door chimed again, and Luna Daniels entered with Aisha close behind. Luna wore a simple blue dress, her head held high despite the exhaustion evident in her face. Aisha had chosen a white sweater and jeans, her natural hair framing her face like a protective cloud. Her sketchbook was clutched tight against her chest like a shield. Michael drew in a sharp breath at the sight of Luna. Something passed between them, a current of recognition, of history, before Luna deliberately looked away. "If everyone could gather round," Pastor Green called out, his gentle voice carrying authority. The crowd pressed closer, cameras ready, breaths held. Michael stepped into the center of the space, his large frame somehow looking vulnerable under the fluorescent lights. Ryan stood beside him, staring at his shoes. "Thank you all for coming," Michael began, his deep voice rough with emotion. "What happened yesterday in this diner was wrong. My son Ryan acted out of ignorance and cruelty, and as his father, I bear some responsibility for that." He turned to face Aisha and Luna directly. "I'm deeply sorry for what Ryan did to you, Aisha. You deserved none of it, and Luna—" His voice caught. "Luna, I owe you so much more than an apology." The crowd stirred, sensing something bigger coming. Luna's fingers tightened around her purse strap. "Many of you know me as Hammer Bennett, the mechanic," Michael continued. "But 20 years ago, I was someone else. I ran with the Hells Angels. I lived a life of violence and chaos until God showed me a better way." He paused, gathering strength. "What many of you don't know is that before I left that life behind, I knew Luna. We were in love." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lowered as people leaned in, hungry for more. Ryan's head snapped up, confusion written across his face. "I left town without knowing—" Michael's voice broke. He looked directly at Aisha, whose eyes had grown wide with understanding. "Without knowing that Luna was pregnant. Aisha is my daughter." The diner erupted in shocked whispers. Camera flashes popped like lightning. Ryan staggered back a step, his face draining of color as he stared at Aisha, his victim, his sister. Luna trembled, her composure cracking. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she shook her head, whether in denial or pain, no one could tell. Aisha's sketchbook clattered to the floor. She looked between Michael and Ryan, her expression a storm of emotions, hurt, betrayal, disbelief. The brother she never knew had poured a milkshake over her head for laughs. The crowd's focus shifted. Judgment about Ryan's cruel prank transformed into shocked gossip about the scandal. "A biker gang member?" someone whispered. "An illegitimate child?" muttered another. The story was morphing before their eyes into something bigger, messier, more sensational. People began to drift toward the door, phones already busy spreading the news. The reporters hurried out to file their stories, leaving behind a heavy silence broken only by the hum of the diner's refrigerators. Luna found her voice at last. "We need to go," she said, reaching for Aisha's hand. When Michael stepped toward them, she held up her other hand like a wall. "No, not now. Not like this." "Luna, please," Michael pleaded. "We need to talk about this." 20 years too late, Luna said, her voice sharp with pain. She guided Aisha toward the door, but Aisha pulled away, turning to face Ryan. The siblings stared at each other, mirror images of shock and confusion. Aisha's glare held all the hurt of yesterday's humiliation, now doubled by the weight of their shared blood. Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. As the door closed behind the Daniels women, Michael placed a heavy hand on Ryan's shoulder. "We'll fix this," he whispered, though his voice held more hope than certainty. Somehow. The diner stood empty now, save for father and son, and Pastor Green, who watched them with compassionate eyes. The morning sun had finally broken through the clouds, streaming through the windows to illuminate the mess they'd made, not of spilled milkshake this time, but of spilled secrets and shattered peace. The drive home was silent, thick with unspoken words. Ryan's hands shook as he gripped the passenger door handle of his father's pickup truck. The moment they stepped through their front door, the anger that had been building inside him exploded. "You lied to me!" Ryan grabbed a framed photo from the hallway wall, one of him and his father working on an old Chevy together. "My whole life has been nothing but lies!" The frame hit the wall with a satisfying crash, glass scattering across the hardwood floor. Michael stood quietly, watching his son with pain-filled eyes. "I never lied, Ryan. I just didn't tell you everything." "Oh, that's rich!" Ryan's laugh was bitter, harsh. "You didn't tell me you were some kind of criminal? Didn't tell me I had a sister? The same girl I—" His voice cracked. "The same girl I humiliated in front of everyone?" "I left that life to protect you." Michael's voice was steady, but his hands were clenched at his sides. "The Hell's Angels. They don't let people just walk away. I had to make a clean break, start fresh. I didn't know about Luna being pregnant. If you had what?" Ryan spun around, face flushed with anger. "You'd have stuck around? Been a real father? That's a convenient story, isn't it?" "It's the truth, son. I found God in prison, turned my life around." "Prison?" Ryan's eyes widened. "You were in prison too? Fantastic, just fantastic." He grabbed his car keys from the hook by the door. "I'm out of here." "Ryan, wait." But Ryan was already gone, the screen door slamming behind him. Across town, in a modest house with window boxes full of flowers, Luna sat on the edge of Aisha's bed. Aisha lay curled on her side, still wearing the clothes from the diner, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. "Baby girl," Luna stroked her daughter's hair. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you about your father years ago." "Why didn't you?" Aisha's voice was muffled by her pillow. "All those times I asked about him, you just said he was gone." "Because it hurt too much," Luna admitted softly. "Michael, your father, he was different back then. Wild, dangerous. When he disappeared, I thought it was better to leave those memories buried." Aisha's phone buzzed again, the 15th time in the last hour. She picked it up, scrolling through messages from friends who had seen the video of Ryan's cruelty, now viewing it through new eyes. "Jessica says she's sorry for not standing up for me yesterday," Aisha said flatly. "Now that everyone knows the truth, they're all sorry." Luna took her daughter's hand. "People's opinions change like the wind, baby. What matters is who you are inside." Meanwhile, Ryan drove aimlessly through town, his phone silent in his pocket. The friends who had laughed with him yesterday, who had encouraged his cruel prank, weren't texting anymore. No more party invites, no more group chats. Just silence. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Ryan found himself driving past the Daniels house. He slowed down, seeing Aisha on the front porch. She had set up an easel and was painting, her brush strokes quick and determined. Even from the street, he could see she was pretending not to notice his car. Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The urge to stop, to say something, anything, warred with his pride. In the end, pride won. He pressed the gas pedal and drove away, the setting sun casting long shadows across the road ahead. Back at home, Michael sat alone on the porch steps, his old leather jacket spread across his lap. The worn leather still carried the faint smell of motorcycle oil and cigarette smoke, reminders of a life he'd thought he'd left behind. His phone lay beside him, still warm from the call he'd just received from Principal Holloway. "This kind of bullying cannot be tolerated," she had said, her voice stern. "The board is considering expulsion. I'm sorry, Michael, but actions have consequences." He ran his fingers over the jacket's patches, each one a reminder of choices made, paths taken. The largest patch, now faded with age, still showed the Hells Angels insignia clearly enough to make his stomach turn. "Lord," he whispered into the gathering darkness, "I thought I'd paid for my sins, but they're coming back through my boy." The crickets chirped in the yard, a gentle chorus accompanying his troubled thoughts. Somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle revved, an ordinary sound that now carried echoes of his past. Michael folded the jacket carefully, as if putting away more than just leather and memories. Inside the house, glass still littered the floor where Ryan had smashed the picture frame. Michael looked at the fallen photograph, father and son, smiling, working together on that old Chevy. Simple moments that had seemed so pure now felt tainted by the weight of secrets kept too long. The truth had finally come out, but instead of bringing relief, it had shattered the careful peace he'd built over 20 years. His son was facing expulsion. His daughter wanted nothing to do with him, and the woman he'd never stopped loving looked at him with eyes full of pain. As night settled fully over the town, Michael remained on the porch, the folded jacket beside him like a silent accusation. The stars emerged one by one above him, unchanged by the day's revelations, offering no answers to the questions that kept running through his mind. How do you protect your children from your past? How do you make amends for mistakes that keep rippling outward, touching lives you never meant to harm? The porch light cast a weak circle around him. But beyond that, the darkness seemed to pulse with memories of thunder runs down midnight highways, of choices made in anger, of a love left behind. Now those memories had caught up with him, demanding to be faced not just by him, but by his son as well. The Sunday morning sun filtered through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the wooden pews of First Baptist Church. Luna and Aisha Daniels slipped into their usual spot in the third row, their shoulders touching as they settled onto the smooth, worn wood. Aisha's fingers traced the familiar groove in the hymnal holder before her, a habit she'd developed over years of Sunday services. The sanctuary smelled of lemon polish and aging hymnals, familiar scents that usually brought comfort. Today, though, her heart felt heavy, weighed down by more than just the events of Friday afternoon. "You doing okay, baby?" Luna whispered, squeezing her daughter's hand. Aisha managed a small nod, though her eyes remained fixed on the empty pulpit ahead. Other church members filtered in around them, their whispered conversations falling silent as they noticed the Daniels. Aisha could feel their stares, could practically hear their thoughts. The girl from the video, Michael Bennett's secret daughter. Pastor Samuel Green stepped up to the pulpit, his kind eyes scanning the congregation before landing on Aisha. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and opened his Bible with practiced ease. "Today," he began, his voice warm and steady, "we're going to talk about something that's at the very heart of our faith. Forgiveness." Aisha's breath caught in her throat. She felt her mother's hand tighten around hers. In Matthew chapter 18, verse 21, Peter comes to Jesus with a question. Pastor Green leaned forward slightly. He asks, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times?" The pastor paused, his gaze sweeping across the congregation. Now, Peter probably thought he was being generous here. 7 times. That's a lot of forgiveness, isn't it? A few nervous chuckles rippled through the sanctuary. Aisha felt tears beginning to well up in her eyes. But Jesus answers him, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Pastor Green's voice softened. Some translations say 70 times 7. The exact number isn't the point. What Jesus is telling us is that true forgiveness isn't about keeping count. It's about changing our hearts. A tear slipped down Aisha's cheek. She quickly wiped it away, but not before Pastor Green noticed. His expression softened further. Forgiveness isn't easy, he continued. It's not supposed to be. Sometimes it feels impossible. Sometimes the hurt runs so deep we think we'll drown in it. But forgiveness isn't about forgetting the hurt. It's about choosing to love anyway. It's about breaking cycles of pain and creating something new. Luna wrapped an arm around Aisha's shoulders as more tears fell. Around them, the congregation sat in thoughtful silence, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows growing stronger as the service continued. After the final hymn, people began filing out of the sanctuary. Luna and Aisha remained in their pew, letting others pass by. Pastor Green made his way over to them, but before he could speak, they noticed Principal Holloway standing in the aisle, her usual stern expression softened by something that looked like concern. Mrs. Daniels, Aisha, Principal Holloway said quietly, I hope you don't mind me coming here, but I needed to speak with you both. Luna gestured for her to sit. Pastor Green joined them, creating a small circle of privacy in the emptying sanctuary. The school board meets tomorrow to decide Ryan Bennett's fate, Principal Holloway began. While the video evidence is damaging enough, your testimony, Aisha, could be crucial in determining whether he's expelled. Aisha's fingers twisted in her lap. You want me to speak against him? I want you to speak the truth, Principal Holloway corrected gently. Whatever that may be. Pastor Green cleared his throat softly. Sometimes the Lord presents us with opportunities to choose grace, even when it seems undeserved. Aisha sat quietly for a long moment, thinking about the sermon she'd just heard, about forgiveness that went beyond counting, about cycles of pain that needed breaking. What if, she began slowly, what if instead of expulsion, there was another way? Principal Holloway leaned forward slightly. What did you have in mind? The Youth Outreach Center here at church, Aisha said, growing more confident. They're always short on volunteers. What if Ryan had to help there for a month, working with the kids, helping with activities? Luna's eyes widened slightly, but a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Pastor Green nodded thoughtfully. We could certainly use the help, and it might do young Ryan some good to serve others for a change. Every afternoon for a month, Aisha added firmly. If he agrees to that and actually does it, I won't push for expulsion. Principal Holloway considered this for a moment. Community service in lieu of expulsion. It's unusual, but not unprecedented. The board might agree to it, especially coming from you, Aisha. Luna squeezed her daughter's shoulder. I'm proud of you, baby. This could be good for everyone. That afternoon, Michael Bennett sat at his kitchen table, turning his coffee mug slowly between his hands as he delivered the news to Ryan. The teenager's reaction was immediate and explosive. Are you kidding me? Ryan shouted, pushing back from the table so hard his chair scraped against the floor. Work at the church? With her? No way! It's this or expulsion, Michael said firmly. Principal Holloway was very clear about that. Aisha's doing you a favor here, son. A favor? Ryan's laugh was bitter. Right. She just wants to humiliate me, make me her charity case or something. Michael set his mug down with a sharp click. You humiliated her first, remember? Poured a milkshake over her head just to make your friends laugh. And now we find out she's your sister. He shook his head. You're going. That's final. Ryan kicked the chair, earning a warning look from his father. This is garbage. I'm not doing it. Yes, you are. Michael's voice was quiet but steel hard. Because if you don't, you're not just getting expelled. You'll lose your phone, your car privileges, and any hope of me helping you set up your own garage someday. That stopped Ryan cold. He'd been dreaming of opening his own motorcycle repair shop since he was 12, learning everything he could from his father's business. You can't. I can, Michael cut him off. And I will. Actions have consequences, Ryan. It's time you learned that. The sun was setting when Michael's truck pulled into the church parking lot later that evening. Neither father nor son had spoken during the drive, the silence heavy between them. The church's white steeple rose against the darkening sky, its cross glowing faintly in the twilight. Ryan stared out the passenger window, his jaw set in a hard line. The youth center entrance was around the back of the church, a simple door under a yellow security light. Pastor Green stood waiting there, his kind face visible even from the parking lot. Ready? Michael asked quietly. Ryan didn't answer. He just yanked the door handle and stepped out into the gathering darkness, each footstep toward the church heavy with reluctance and resentment. The cross continued to glow above them, a silent witness to what might be the beginning of healing, or just another chapter in a story of pain passed down through generations. Michael watched his son walk toward the church, remembering his own journey toward redemption, praying that Ryan might find his way there too, even if he had to be dragged to the first step. Monday morning arrived with the kind of humid heaviness that made Ryan's t-shirt stick to his back before he even reached the youth center's entrance. His footsteps dragged across the cracked concrete, each step feeling like he was walking to his own execution. The center was housed in an old brick building behind the church, its walls decorated with colorful murals that seemed to mock his dark mood. Children's laughter echoed from inside, making his stomach twist with anxiety. Pastor Green met him at the door, wearing a warm smile that Ryan couldn't bring himself to return. Good morning, Ryan. Aisha's already here. She'll show you what needs to be done. Inside, the main room buzzed with activity. About 15 kids, ranging from 6 to 13 years old, sprawled across worn couches and gathered around craft tables. When Ryan walked in, their chatter dropped to whispers and poorly hidden giggles. He caught fragments of their conversations. That's him. The guy from the video? Aisha's brother. His face burned. He shoved his hands in his pockets and stared at the floor, wishing he could disappear. Aisha stood by a bulletin board, pinning up children's artwork. She wore paint-splattered overalls over a yellow t-shirt, her braids tied back neatly. When she turned to face him, her expression was carefully blank, her eyes sliding past him like he was made of glass. The storage rooms need cleaning, she said, her voice neutral. There's broken furniture that needs fixing too. Tools are in the maintenance closet. Without waiting for a response, she returned to her task. Ryan's jaw clenched. Of course she'd give him the worst jobs. He headed toward the storage rooms, ignoring the whispers that followed him. The first storage room was a disaster. Boxes everywhere, old sports equipment scattered across the floor, broken chairs stacked in corners. Dust floated in the sunbeams that streamed through a small window. Ryan stood in the doorway, overwhelmed and angry. Looks like quite a project, came his father's voice behind him. Ryan turned to see Michael standing there, toolbox in hand. He wore his work clothes, worn jeans and a faded denim shirt with the sleeves rolled up. What are you doing here? Michael stepped into the room. Pastor Green mentioned they've got an old piano that needs work. Figured I'd give it a look while you're here. Come to babysit me? Ryan muttered. No. Michael set his toolbox down. Come to help the church, same as you. They worked in silence for a while, Ryan sorting through boxes, Michael examining the broken furniture. The quiet was broken only by the distant sounds of children playing and the occasional squeak of rusty hinges. As they worked, Michael began to talk softly, almost to himself. "You know, when I was in the Angels, we had a storage room like this at our clubhouse, place where we kept all our secrets." He paused, running a hand over a broken chair leg. "Never thought I'd end up in prison, but looking back, it was heading there all along." Ryan pretended not to listen, but his movements slowed. "Found God in there," Michael continued, his voice thoughtful. "Not all at once. Wasn't like lightning struck or anything. Just slowly. Like sunrise." He picked up a screwdriver. "Started fixing things in the prison workshop. Furniture mostly. Found out I was good with my hands for something besides fighting." Through the open door, they could hear Aisha's voice, leading the children in a song. The melody drifted in, making the dusty room feel less oppressive. "Your sister's got her mother's voice," Michael said quietly. Ryan's hand stilled on the box he was holding. "She's not my sister." "Blood says different." "Blood doesn't mean anything," Ryan snapped, but his voice lacked its usual heat. The morning wore on. Ryan sorted through years of accumulated junk while Michael repaired chairs and tables. Around noon, the smell of pizza drew them out to the main room, where the kids were lining up for lunch. Aisha stood near the piano where Michael had been working, her hand resting lightly on its newly polished surface. She was close enough to have heard Michael's stories, though she pretended to be absorbed in her phone. Ryan grabbed a slice of pizza and retreated to a corner, watching as the kids chattered and played. He noticed how some of the younger ones gravitated toward Aisha, showing her their drawings or asking for help with homework. She had a gentle way with them, always patient, always kind. The afternoon sun was starting to fade when Luna arrived, carrying several bags of groceries. The kids crowded around her, excited by the prospect of fresh-baked cookies and fruit for their afternoon snack. She moved through the kitchen with practiced ease, setting out plates and napkins. When she passed Ryan, who was fixing a wobbly table leg, she paused. "Thank you for your help today," she said softly. Her voice held no anger, no judgment, just simple gratitude. Ryan looked up, surprised. Yeah, sure." Luna nodded and continued on, but something in her gentle acknowledgement had cracked Ryan's armor slightly. He found himself working with more care on the remaining repairs, making sure each piece was solid and secure. By evening, most of the kids had gone home. Ryan gathered his things, his muscles aching from the day's work. As he walked to his car, he stopped to look at the mural on the center's outer wall, one of Aisha's pieces. It showed hands of different colors joined in a circle, reaching toward a bright sky. The detail was incredible. He could see every line and crease in the painted hands, every subtle shade of skin tone. Standing there in the gathering dusk, Ryan felt something shift inside him. The shame that had been burning hot and defensive all day cooled into something else, something that felt more like determination. The mural's message of unity seemed to mock his past actions, but also offered a glimpse of possibility. He got into his car, his body heavy with exhaustion. The day had been long and uncomfortable, but as he drove home, the image of those joined hands stayed with him, along with the echo of Luna's quiet "thank you" and the memory of his father's stories about finding redemption in unexpected places. The days at the youth center fell into a rhythm. Each morning, Ryan would arrive, hands stuffed in his pockets, nodding silently to Aisha before getting to work. The storage rooms slowly transformed. Shelves straightened, broken items fixed, order emerging from chaos. Michael brought his tools from the motorcycle shop, setting up a small workbench in the corner. "Here," he'd say, showing Ryan how to measure twice and cut once, how to sand rough edges smooth, how to make old things new again. The kids started drifting over, curious about the sounds of hammering and sawing. "Can I try?" asked Tommy, a 10-year-old with untied shoelaces and endless questions. Ryan hesitated, then handed him a small piece of sandpaper. "Like this," Ryan demonstrated, moving the paper in smooth strokes. "Feel how rough it is at first? Keep going until it's smooth." More children gathered, eager to help. Ryan found himself teaching them basic skills: how to use a screwdriver, how to level a picture frame, how to tell if wood was solid or rotting. His voice grew gentler with them, his movements more patient. Aisha watched from her art corner, skepticism written in the set of her shoulders. But she couldn't help noticing how Ryan's face softened when working with the kids, how his quick temper seemed to fade when explaining something for the third or fourth time. One Wednesday afternoon, while Ryan was showing a group how to fix loose chair legs, he overheard two older boys near Aisha's latest mural project. "That doesn't even look real," one snickered, pointing at her painting of children playing in a garden. "The colors are all wrong." "Yeah," the other chimed in. "My little sister could do better." Ryan's hands stilled on the chair. Without thinking, he stood up. "Hey," he called out, his voice firm but not angry. "You two ever try painting something that big, that detailed?" The boys turned, surprised. "It's not just about making things look real," Ryan continued, surprising himself with the words. "It's about making people feel something when they look at it. And her art? It makes people feel hope." The boys shuffled their feet, muttering apologies before slinking away. Ryan returned to his work, face burning, aware of the silence that had fallen in the room. Later, as he was cleaning up his tools, Aisha approached. Her arms were crossed, but her expression was softer than usual. "Thanks," she said quietly, "for what you said about my art." Ryan nodded, struggling to meet her eyes. "I meant it." They stood in awkward silence until Aisha spoke again. "I can't sleep most nights," she admitted. "Keep thinking about art school applications, about whether I'm good enough." Ryan leaned against the workbench. "Yeah? I can't sleep either. Everyone's got me tagged as this monster online, like that's all I'll ever be." "People change," Aisha said slowly. "At least, that's what Mom always says." "Does she really believe that?" "She must. She invited you and your dad for dinner tonight." Ryan's head snapped up. "What?" 7 o'clock, Aisha confirmed, already walking away. "Don't be late." That evening, Ryan and Michael stood on Luna's porch, both wearing clean shirts and carrying awkward tension. Luna opened the door with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Come in," she said. "Dinner's almost ready." The house was small but welcoming, filled with the smell of cooking and the soft sound of gospel music. Family photos lined the walls: Aisha growing up, school pictures, art show ribbons. Michael's gaze lingered on each one, taking in the moments he'd missed. They gathered around the table set with mismatched plates and fresh flowers. Luna's hands reached out to either side. "Shall we pray?" They joined hands, Michael's rough fingers gentle against Luna's, Ryan's hesitant touch meeting Aisha's. Luna's voice was clear and steady. "Lord, help us forgive faster than we judge. Bless this food and this moment of peace. Amen." The prayer settled over them like a soft blanket. As they passed dishes of food, the tension began to ease. Luna asked Ryan about his work with the kids. Michael shared stories about his most challenging motorcycle repairs. Aisha described her latest art project. Near the end of the meal, a brief smile passed between Luna and Michael. Quick as a shooting star, but full of shared memories, and perhaps a hint of hope. Ryan caught Aisha's eye across the table, and for once, neither looked away. The evening faded into gentle conversation and the clinking of dishes being cleared. When it was time to leave, the goodbyes were still awkward, but carried less weight than before. As Ryan followed his father down the porch steps, he looked back to see Aisha standing in the doorway, her expression thoughtful. The night air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of late summer flowers. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed. It felt like a moment balanced between what had been and what might be, fragile as a soap bubble, but filled with quiet hope. Michael started the truck, its familiar rumble breaking the silence. As they drove home, neither spoke, but the silence was comfortable, like the pause between movements in a symphony, not an ending, but a breath before the next note. The midweek prayer meeting buzzed with whispered conversations in the church basement. Ryan, now a familiar face at the youth center, was organizing art supplies when he overheard two elderly church ladies talking near the coffee station. "Such a shame about Aisha's scholarship," one whispered, stirring her coffee. "That video going viral really hurt her chances." "The Art Institute said they couldn't risk the negative publicity," the other added, shaking her head. $25,000 in scholarship money gone just like that. Ryan's hands froze on the construction paper he was sorting. His stomach twisted into a tight knot. The milkshake incident, his stupid attempt to look cool, wasn't just haunting social media anymore. It was destroying Aisha's future. He watched her across the room, teaching little kids how to mix watercolors. Her smile was gentle, patient. She looked so at peace when she worked with art. The weight of what he'd done pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table while his father cleaned grease from under his fingernails after a long day at the shop. "Dad," Ryan said, his voice quiet but determined, "I want to work extra shifts at the repair shop." Michael looked up, suspicious. "Why the sudden interest?" Ryan struggled to find the right words. "I want to learn more about motorcycles, maybe earn some money." Michael studied his son's face for a long moment. "It's hard work, early mornings, angry customers sometimes. You sure about this?" Ryan nodded. "I'm sure." "All right," Michael said slowly. "Be there at 7 tomorrow morning. We'll start with the basics." The next morning found Ryan standing in the chilly garage, surrounded by the smell of oil and metal. Michael handed him a clean shop rag and pointed to a dismantled carburetor on the workbench. "First lesson," Michael said. "Everything gets cleaned before we start. Every single part matters." Days began to blur together. Ryan woke before sunrise, worked at the shop until early afternoon, then headed straight to the youth center. Michael taught him patiently how to rebuild carburetors, change oil, talk to frustrated customers who didn't understand why repairs took time. "Your hands are getting stronger," Michael commented one morning, watching Ryan tighten a bolt with steady precision. "But your eyes look tired, son." Ryan just shrugged, focusing on the task. Every dollar he earned went straight into an envelope hidden in his dresser drawer. He calculated constantly. If he worked enough hours, saved every penny, maybe he could help make up for what he'd destroyed. At the youth center, Aisha noticed the changes in Ryan but interpreted them differently. She saw him stifling yawns, his movements slower than usual. When he dozed off during lunch break, she assumed he was bored or indifferent to being there. "He's probably just counting down the days until his punishment is over," she told her mother one evening while helping with dishes. Luna dried a plate slowly, watching her daughter. "Sometimes remorse grows in silence," she said softly. "Like seeds underground, you can't see what's happening, but something's taking root." Maybe, Aisha replied, but her voice was doubtful. The work was exhausting, but Ryan found unexpected peace in it. The rhythmic sound of tools against metal, the satisfaction of fixing something broken, the quiet approval in his father's eyes when he did something right. It all felt like small steps toward something better. Every customer interaction taught him something new. An elderly woman brought in her late husband's motorcycle, terrified it would never run again. Ryan spent extra time explaining each repair, watching her fear turn to relief. A teenager about his age came in worried. About cost. Ryan worked through lunch to keep the labor charges down. "You're getting good with people," Michael observed. "That's half the job right there." Friday morning arrived with a hint of fall in the air. Ryan counted the money in his envelope one last time. $2,375. Not nearly enough to replace what was lost, but it was something. His hands shook slightly as he filled out the anonymous donor form for the scholarship fund. The bank teller smiled as she processed the deposit. "That's very generous," she said. "Would you like to leave a name?" Ryan shook his head. "No name. Just put it toward Aisha Daniels' Art Scholarship Fund." Walking out of the bank, Ryan felt lighter somehow. The money wouldn't fix everything, but maybe it was a start. Maybe it was a way to say what he couldn't find words for. That he was sorry, that he understood what he'd almost ruined, that he wanted to make it right. He headed to work, the rising sun warming his face. In the shop's office, Michael was already on the phone with a supplier, but he paused to give Ryan a nod. They worked side by side that morning, rebuilding an engine, the familiar rhythm of tools and tasks filling the space between them. Just before lunch, Michael handed Ryan a rag to clean his hands. "You know," he said carefully, "whatever you're working so hard for, I hope it helps." Ryan looked at his father, wondering if he knew, but Michael just turned back to the engine, giving his son the privacy of his own redemption. The morning light filtered through the shop's dusty windows, catching on chrome and steel, turning ordinary tools into something almost beautiful. Ryan thought of Aisha's paintings, how she could take simple things and make them speak of hope. Maybe that's what he was trying to do too, turn something broken into something better, one small piece at a time. The late summer sun cast long shadows across the church parking lot as volunteers hung streamers and arranged folding chairs. Inside the youth center, Aisha stood before her newest mural, but her usual pride was missing. The wall-sized painting showed children playing beneath a rainbow, but something felt hollow about it now. "It's beautiful, baby," Luna said, squeezing her daughter's shoulder. "Just like all your work?" Aisha managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Mom." She didn't say what they both knew, that without the scholarship, her dreams of art school were slipping away. The charity event was supposed to restore trust in the community, but Aisha felt like she was just going through the motions. People began arriving around 6 o'clock. The youth center buzzed with conversation as locals admired the artwork covering the walls. Children darted between adults, pointing out their favorite pieces. Michael stood near the entrance, greeting people warmly despite the occasional cold shoulder from those who still whispered about his past. Ryan had been oddly absent all afternoon. When Aisha asked Michael where he was, the former biker just smiled mysteriously. "He's working on something special," was all he would say. As the evening progressed, Pastor Wilson called everyone to gather in the main room. "Tonight is about healing," he began, his voice carrying to the back of the crowd. "About showing that our community is stronger than our differences." Aisha stood with her mother near the front, trying to focus on the pastor's words instead of the weight in her chest. That's when she heard the squeak of wheels behind her. Turning, she saw Ryan pushing in a large covered frame on a dolly. "Before we continue," Ryan said, his voice shakier than she'd ever heard it, "I have something I'd like to show everyone." He looked directly at Aisha. "Especially you." The room fell silent as Ryan pulled away the sheet. Gasps filled the air. Aisha's hand flew to her mouth. There, perfectly restored, was her middle school mural, the one she'd painted 3 years ago for the church's centennial celebration, the one that had been damaged beyond repair in a storm last winter. The image showed hands of every shade reaching toward a white dove, streams of light connecting them all. "I found the original sketches in your old notebook," Ryan explained, his words coming faster now. "The one you left at the center last week. I've been working on this every night after my shift at Dad's shop." Aisha stepped closer, unable to believe what she was seeing. Every detail was exactly as she remembered. The subtle shading in the dove's wings, the way the light seemed to pulse between the reaching fingers. But there was something new, too. A depth and richness to the colors that made them seem almost alive. Luna wasn't even trying to hide her tears. "Oh, Lord," she whispered, clutching her daughter's hand. The crowd erupted in applause. Someone called out, "Beautiful!" Another voice added, "That's what community looks like." Aisha turned to Ryan, finding it hard to speak. You did this?" He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "Dad helped with the frame construction, and I had to watch about 50 online tutorials about paint restoration. But yeah." He paused, meeting her eyes. "I wanted to show you that I see it now, what art means, what it can do." Michael stepped forward, pride radiating from his face. He placed one arm around Ryan and, after a moment's hesitation, the other around Aisha. "These are my children," he announced to the room, his voice thick with emotion. "Both of them." The applause grew louder. Pastor Wilson wiped his eyes before leading a prayer of thanksgiving. Even those who had been coldest to the Bennetts were smiling now. Later, as the crowd thinned, Luna approached Michael. "Would you and Ryan like to come over for dinner?" she asked softly. "I made too much pot roast anyway." The meal was unlike anything they'd shared before. The tension that had marked their previous dinner was gone, replaced by something warmer. Ryan told stories about his restoration mishaps, making them all laugh. Luna shared embarrassing tales from Aisha's early artistic attempts, including the time she'd painted the family cat blue. "I was 4, Aisha protested, but she was laughing too. Michael watched his children, both of them, with wonder in his eyes. This was what he'd prayed for, even when it seemed impossible. As the evening wound down, Ryan offered to take out the trash. The night air was cool against his face as he walked around to the back of the church. He was still smiling, replaying the sound of Aisha's laughter, when he saw it. The smile died on his lips. There, sprayed across the church's back wall in angry red letters, were 2 words: "Traitor" and "Angels Dead." The joy of the evening turned to ice in his stomach. He knew those words, knew what they meant. The Hell's Angels hadn't forgotten his father's betrayal, and now they were making sure the family knew it. Ryan stood frozen, staring at the dripping letters. Inside, he could still hear the muffled sounds of happiness, of healing. Out here, in the darkness, a different truth waited, one that threatened to destroy everything they'd just begun to build. The morning sun cast long shadows across the church parking lot as Michael Bennett made his early rounds. His footsteps echoed against the pavement, the air still crisp with dawn. When he turned the corner to check the back wall, his heart stopped. "No," he whispered, his weathered hands clenching into fists. The red spray paint screamed at him like blood on the white wall. But it wasn't just the words that made his stomach turn. It was the small symbols painted beneath them. Tiny details only a former angel would recognize. He pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and dialed Luna. "Keep Aisha close today," he said when she answered. "They're back." "The angels?" Luna's voice was tight with fear. "After all these years? I'll handle it. Just be careful." Ryan came running up, already dressed for school. "Dad, I saw them last night. We should—" "No." Michael's voice cut through the air like steel. "You let this go, son. These aren't high school bullies. These are men who—" He stopped, shaking his head. "Just let me handle it." But Ryan's jaw was set, his eyes burning with the same stubborn fire Michael remembered from his own youth. Before he could argue further, cars began pulling into the parking lot. Word had spread fast. Pastor Wilson arrived with paint cans and rollers. Church members followed with coffee and donuts. Even some of Ryan's old friends showed up, looking awkward but determined to help. Aisha and Luna came last, carrying extra brushes. Aisha took one look at the wall and said, "We're painting a new mural here. Something about hope." "These men don't understand hope," Michael muttered. "Then we'll teach them." Aisha's voice was gentle but firm. "Like you learned, Dad." The word Dad hung in the air between them. The first time she'd called him that. Michael's eyes grew wet as he watched her sketch out a design in her notebook. They worked through the morning, covering hate with fresh paint. As Aisha directed the design, a phoenix rising from flames, she asked Michael quietly, "Will you tell me about how you left them?" Michael paused, roller in hand. Luna had moved closer, pretending to focus on her painting but listening intently. "It was 20 years ago," he began, his voice low. "We were supposed to rough up some rival gang members, simple intimidation. But things went wrong. They always did back then." He swallowed hard. "A kid got caught in the crossfire. Wasn't even 13 years old. I can still hear his mother screaming." Paint dripped slowly from his roller as he continued. "I ran. Found a little church like this one. Pastor there didn't turn me away, even knowing what I was. Showed me there was another path." He looked at Luna. "That's when I met your mother. She made me believe I could be better." Luna's brush had stopped moving. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. "But the angels don't forget," Michael finished. "And they don't forgive like we do." Luna stepped closer, touching his arm. "They're not the only ones who remember," she said softly. "But maybe they're not the only ones who can change either." The moment stretched between them, 20 years of pain and love and regret bridged by understanding. Finally, Luna smiled, a real smile, full of forgiveness. They finished the mural as the sun set, the phoenix's wings spreading hope across the wall where hatred had been. The crowd had thinned, leaving just the family and a few dedicated helpers. No one noticed when Ryan slipped away to the parking lot. No one heard his motorcycle start up over the sound of cleanup and conversation. By the time Michael realized his son was gone, Ryan was already following leads from social media, whispers about bikers at a bar on the edge of town. The roar of Ryan's engine faded into the darkness, carrying him toward danger while his father's warnings echoed uselessly in the night air behind him. The abandoned gas station loomed like a ghost in the darkness, its broken windows reflecting the dim glow of motorcycle headlights. Ryan killed his engine around the corner, his heart pounding against his ribs as he crept closer. Rough laughter and the clink of bottles drifted through the night air. "Did you see that righteous act they're putting on?" A gravelly voice carried across the empty lot. "Hammer's gone soft, painting pretty pictures with his mixed-up family." Ryan's fists clenched as he peered around the corner, 5 men lounged against their bikes, passing around a bottle. Their leather vests bore faded patches, remnants of his father's past life. "That kid of his is just as weak," another man spat. "Cleaning up after little brats, playing nice with the sister he used to bully." Something snapped inside Ryan. Before he could think, he was striding into the light. "Why don't you say that to my face?" The bikers turned, surprise melting into cruel amusement. The largest man, their leader with a snake tattoo crawling up his neck, stepped forward. "Well, look who's here. Baby Bennett, all grown up and angry." "Leave my family alone," Ryan growled, trying to keep his voice steady. "The graffiti, the threats, it stops now." Laughter erupted around him. The leader, Viper, Ryan remembered his father mentioning, circled closer. "Or what, boy? You'll paint over it? Make us volunteer at church?" Ryan swung first, a wild, rage-filled punch that Viper easily dodged. The older man's fist connected with Ryan's jaw, sending him sprawling. Pain exploded through his face as he hit the concrete. "Your daddy used to be something," Viper said, pulling a heavy chain from his bike. "Now look at him. Look at you." Ryan struggled to his feet, tasting blood. He lunged again, but another biker caught him from behind, throwing him hard against a rusty gas pump. His vision blurred as he slumped to the ground. The roar of approaching motorcycles cut through the night. Ryan blinked through swollen eyes to see his father's familiar bike screech to a halt, Aisha clinging to the back. Michael leaped off before the engine died, moving faster than Ryan had ever seen him move. Viper raised the chain, but Michael threw himself between them. "Take it out on me, not him." The night grew still. The gang members shifted uneasily, looking to their leader. They all knew who Michael had been, the enforcer, the one they'd feared and respected. "You were something else once, Hammer," Viper said quietly. "Our brother." "I was lost once," Michael replied. His voice carried across the lot, steady and clear. "Now I'm found, and I forgive you, all of you, for this tonight." Viper's chain lowered slightly. "Forgiveness is weakness." "No." Michael shook his head. "Forgiveness is the hardest strength there is. That's why you can't understand it." Aisha stepped forward, her dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. "The same strength that saved my father could save you too." The bikers looked at this girl, this child of their former brother, and something in their hardened faces shifted. Viper spat on the ground, but his eyes couldn't meet Michael's. "You're not worth the trouble," he muttered finally. "Come on, boys." Their motorcycles roared to life, and they peeled away into the darkness, leaving only the smell of exhaust and stale beer behind. Ryan's legs gave out. Michael caught him as he crumpled, holding him close like he hadn't since Ryan was small. And there, in his father's arms, with Aisha watching silently, Ryan felt the last of his anger drain away. "I'm done hating," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so tired of hating." Michael's arms tightened around him. "I know, son. I know." The abandoned gas station stood silent witness as father and son held each other, while a sister who had learned to forgive kept watch under the stars. Dawn painted the sky in gentle pinks and purples as Ryan winced his way up the church steps. His left eye was swollen shut, and every breath sent sharp pains through his ribs. But he gripped his paint roller with determination. "You should be resting," Aisha said softly, carrying supplies from her mom's car. "No," Ryan shook his head. "This needs to be done today." The graffiti still marred the wall, ugly black letters screaming hatred. But Ryan had a vision now, something bigger than fear, bigger than pain. He pulled out Aisha's original sketches, pointing to where he wanted to make changes. "Here," he said, his bruised fingers tracing the paper. "Can we add us? All of us?" Aisha's eyes widened as she understood. Without a word, she picked up her charcoal and began sketching on the wall, 3 figures standing together beneath sweeping letters. Forgiveness is stronger than fear. As the morning grew warmer, people began arriving. First came the youth group kids, then their parents, and soon the whole neighborhood seemed to gather. Paintbrushes appeared in dozens of hands, colors mixing and blending as the mural took shape. Luna set up a small speaker, and hymns filled the air. Amazing Grace drifted across the parking lot as Michael helped Ryan reach the higher sections, supporting him when his injuries made him wobble. "Steady, son," Michael murmured, his strong hands gentle on Ryan's shoulders. Around noon, Luna called everyone to gather. She stood before the half-finished mural, her voice clear and strong. "Let us pray for peace in our community, in our hearts, and in the hearts of those who still carry anger." The crowd bowed their heads. Ryan felt Aisha's hand slip into his as their mother prayed. News vans pulled up quietly, cameras capturing not scandal this time, but healing. They painted until sunset, working together as the mural came alive. The final rays of light caught the fresh paint, making it gleam like stained glass. Ryan stepped back, taking in their work, his father's strong face, Aisha's gentle smile, his own reformed expression, all united under words of hope. His heart full, Ryan turned to Aisha. "Thank you," he whispered, pulling her into a careful hug despite his bruises, "for not giving up on me." Aisha hugged him back, her voice soft but sure. "You just needed a chance to see who you are." The seasons turned like pages in a book, each month bringing new growth and healing. Spring flowers gave way to summer heat, then autumn leaves, and finally winter snow before spring bloomed again. Through it all, Ryan's transformation continued to unfold. Back in the hallways of Jefferson High, Ryan walked with his head held differently now, not in arrogance, but with quiet confidence. Letters had poured into the school board from everywhere. Church members, youth center kids, even former critics who'd witnessed his change. His record was officially cleared, though he chose to keep volunteering at the center anyway. The mural he and Aisha created became more than just paint on a wall. Tour buses would stop to photograph it, and local papers wrote stories about how it symbolized their town's journey toward unity. Sometimes Ryan would catch people standing there, just staring at those words. Forgiveness is stronger than fear. Michael's bike shop expanded, adding a new building next door. "Second Chance Mentorship Program," read the fresh-painted sign. Troubled teens would come in, angry and lost like Ryan had been, and leave with grease-stained hands and lighter hearts. Michael would tell them his story, Hell's Angels to Heaven's Grace, and somehow the truth of it reached them. Aisha flourished at art school, her talent finally getting the recognition it deserved. The anonymous scholarship donation that had appeared in her account, just enough to replace what she'd lost, remained a mystery to most. But sometimes she'd catch Ryan smiling when she talked about her classes. And she knew. Those extra hours he'd spent at the bike shop suddenly made sense. On graduation morning, the air hummed with excitement and the scent of fresh-cut grass. Ryan stood backstage in his royal blue cap and gown, running his fingers over the speech cards in his pocket. Through the curtain, he could hear the crowd gathering. "You ready?" Michael appeared beside him, straightening Ryan's tassel. "I think so," Ryan nodded, his throat tight with emotion. The ceremony began with all the usual pomp. Pomp and circumstance playing as seniors filed in, speeches about future and promise. Then the principal called Ryan's name. He walked to the podium, his hand steady now as he gripped its edges. Looking out, he found them immediately. Luna, Michael, and Aisha sitting together in the third row. Luna wore her Sunday best. Michael had traded his leather jacket for a suit, and Aisha beamed with pride. "A year ago," Ryan began, his voice carrying across the hushed gymnasium, "I poured a drink on someone once." He paused, meeting Aisha's eyes. "But she poured grace back on me." The crowd rose slowly to their feet, applause building like thunder. Luna dabbed at her eyes with a tissue while Michael wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Aisha clapped until her hands hurt. After the ceremony, they gathered on the sun-drenched lawn. Ryan hugged each of them, his father's strong embrace, Luna's gentle squeeze, and Aisha's fierce grip. As they stood there, a motorcycle engine rumbled in the distance. Once that sound might have made them tense. Now it just blended with the summer breeze, transformed like everything else, from a reminder of pain into a song of freedom and forgiveness. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.